Hello, and welcome to Have Your Say. I'm Ann Minicozzi, president of the Community Breakfast Collaborative of the Main Line. We have our annual Undoing Racism Day event coming up September 22nd. We will be in Zoom. And I'm here with my co-host, Diana Robertson, who is the second vice president of the NAACP of the whole state of Pennsylvania. And we are here with our guest today, Bethany Stewart, who is an activist and advocate and court organizer for Philadelphia Community Bail Fund. And so we're going to be hearing from Bethany about her experience with this nonprofit organization and the kinds of things that she does and that the organization does, and learn more, especially about cash bail and its impacts. So Bethany, thanks so much for being here with us today on Have Your Say. And if you could start by giving some biographical information that you want to share, just some background information on yourself, and then also really how you came to this organization, decided to work with this organization.
Sure. So I was born in Jefferson Hospital. I'm just kidding. So I consider myself to be a Black liberation creative, right? And that really permeates all aspects of my life. Even in my 9 to 5, I'm always working towards the liberation of all Black people and the way all Black people, the nuanced ways and the different ways in which all Black people experience white supremacy in America, experience racism, right? I'm always fighting and advocating for those folks. So it shows up in the work that I do with my church in addressing how racism shows up within the church, especially within the American church. And I do a lot of workshops. I am an anti-racist consultant with Roots of Justice, which is a nonprofit that has a bunch of trainers together that are passionate about affecting change and doing anti-racism work for organizations. We're a collective together that does this work. I am a podcaster. My podcast is called Color Correction, and we talk about the intersections of race and faith and how we're navigating both our faith and also navigating white supremacy and anti-racism. I'm also a writer for Christians for Social Action. And yeah, that's who I am. I'm a single woman. I don't have kids, so I have a lot of time to give myself to movement work.
All right,
that's great.
How did you become connected to Philadelphia Community Bail Fund then?
I think the best way to describe how I became connected to the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund is that I'm a really audacious Black woman. I have a very distinct memory of my mother growing up. She was always on the phone with her sisters. She cared for us. That makes it sound like she was just negligent. I was homeschooled. She was like my number one teacher, right? But when school was out, my mom loved chit-chatting with her sisters. And I have this distinct memory of the phone cord going into the bedroom and her talking to one of her sisters and saying, that Bethany thinks she can do anything. And I always have been like that, right? Like I've always, I think part of my socialization as having been homeschooled, I didn't realize the limits that the world would put on me at that time. So I have always just been somebody that has felt really empowered and has always felt like I can just do things. I think audacious is the best word to describe me. So literally just one day I was laying in bed and I was thinking of my sorority sister, Sandra Bland, who died in prison. I believe she was killed in prison, but that's questionable. And I was thinking of her and I was like, my goodness, it would be so fantastic for Black folks to use our creativity to free ourselves, right? Like, how can we use the Black arts to work towards our collective liberation? I was like, maybe we can have a festival. Now, mind you, I was a history major in college and I minored in political science. Music, I might have been in course in high school, but like music and festival and the art scene, that's not me at all. At the time, I was a legal assistant. But for some reason, this thought just almost feels like it got implanted in my heart. And I felt like I could do it. And I did. So I organized this festival. We were able to raise $5,000 the first year that we did it. But my intention was, one of my friends organized with the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund. And this was within months of the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund's inception, or its creation. But my idea was like, I'm just going to host this festival one time. We'll see what happens. Whatever money we raise, I'm just going to pass it to the bail fund and keep it pushing. The beautiful thing that happened is when I called my friend and said, hey, I want to do this and raise this money for you all. I got invited to one meeting. And I think the beauty of the organization that I organized with the bail fund is that we really believe in people's inherent value, and that everybody has value in the community, almost in this very familial way. And I immediately got brought in. And some of these people that I organize with now are almost like my cousins. Like I think of them like family. So yeah, me just having a random audacious idea is the way that I got connected to the bail fund, and somebody's phone number is the way that I got connected.
All right, good. Well, I know we want to set out the different types of bail that could be possible. So I know, Diana, you have more expertise on that background. So would you?
Okay, and I'll be brief about it. But basically, what I wanted to let folks know is that is an article in the Constitution, I believe it's 8, and then in our Pennsylvania Constitution, that there are statutes on bail. It's not only on, there are 5 different types of bail, but in addition to that, there are also statutes on how, or the things that you want to consider in giving bail. Now, it's the district justice who actually sets bail. And so there are guidelines that already exist. The problem is for the average person who's coming before a district justice. Well, they're coming before them because they've been arrested by a police officer, all right? And the police officer completes an affidavit that basically says what the charges are and how they came to be arrested. And they're supposed to give background information, so information as to whether the person has no previous record or they do have a record, and if it's something dealing with a violent crime or a nonviolent crime, and all of these types of things. Because one of the things the justice wants to consider is that person going to be harmful to society? Is that person, there's 2 basically things that, is society going to be safe if they're, okay, depending on the charge. And then the other piece of it, will that person show up in court? So those are the 2 basic premises. And so based on that premise, if a person, obviously this is their first encounter with the legal system, the legal system, then, and there are some offenses or things that has to do with any type of violence at all, then by right, they should get what's called ROR, released on their own recognizance, meaning that, basically they should show up in court and they're not considered to have done anything that would jeopardize society if they're, continue to be out. Now, this is where, it gets tricky because depending upon that district justice, and what I've learned in later years with different cases, I know in Philadelphia that there's usually somebody from the public defender's office who will be there to represent the defendant. Well, in some of the counties, that is not the case. So the only person that you have speaking in regard to this person is the district attorney's office, the representative from the district attorney's office. So if that person doesn't have any representation from the public defender's office at the time bail going to be administered, then very often that a cash bail is literally at the bottom. So if you've got a release on your own recognizance is number 1, and cash bail, at the bottom, well, it clearly shows the disparities when it comes to people of color. Because number one, it's been shown that many people are only sitting in jail because they can't afford to make bail. Okay. And so if that case,
can I give you a quick statistic? I believe in Philadelphia in 2017, I think it might even been higher, but I think it was 67% of those that were incarcerated in Philadelphia County jails were incarcerated pre-trial.
Right.
I want to say it might have been 86%, but
it might be.
It might have been 86, but I think it was 67.
Okay. And there is a lawsuit was actually filed with AFL-CIO in regard to Philadelphia, because the cases that were found to have folks sitting in jail simply because they couldn't make bail was so atrocious that they filed a lawsuit. And I don't believe that lawsuit has actually been heard yet, but there actually is a lawsuit, and the lawsuit actually say real cash bail. But what it does say is that cash bail is the last consideration. So why are these folks sitting in jail if you are supposed to start with releasing them on their own recognizance, and there's nothing to indicate that that should not be the case?
Mm-hmm.
And so basically that's what the lawsuit is about. And so that is like the bigger problem, not just that it's there, but the fact as to how some of the justices are using that statute. And so when you have that case, and just so people know, once again, and not even knowing your own rights, that one of the things, once you get connected to a public defender, that if the bail is something you can make or something atrocious as it compares to the crime that you're charged with, then that public defender should be filing a petition for bail reduction. Mm-hmm. And very often that doesn't happen either. So this person's rights are really just, totally, they're just sitting there. Sometimes don't even know why they're sitting there, pretty much like, why am I here? And then on top of that, they're literally sitting there because they can't make bail.
Yeah. We had one referral around, I'm a very sensitive person. I was just saying today to somebody, it takes nothing for me to cry. So me saying that this made me cry is not the best measure. But I have this distinct memory of around Christmas, I think 2018. I can even still feel the feeling in my chest of getting a referral for a pregnant woman that was in RCF, Riverside Correctional Facility. That was the women's facility in Philadelphia. There's some things going on right now. But she was pregnant around Christmas. Her bail was $50. She didn't get ROR. We had to pay $50.
Wow.
That there's no reason for especially a pregnant woman, to be in prison over.
She shouldn't be in jail anyway. Yeah.
She shouldn't be in prison anyways. And that's where I think my passion for advocating against cash bail comes from, that situation too. I feel like I consistently get reignited. But a big part of my passion for this work is that we don't see how overtly racist the cash bail system is. There is a historic wage gap in America for Black and white family members. I think the average wage or like wealth, there's a wealth gap. I think wealth for the average white family member is $141,000 to the average Black person's family, Black families, $14,000 worth of wealth. We oftentimes are not able to purchase homes. We're oftentimes not able to have access to certain jobs and things like that. So of course, cash bail would be detrimental to our communities and to our lives. But I feel like because racism is so deeply ingrained into our socialization and into our society, there's always this disconnect, right? Like we think that cash bail keeps our community safe. It does not keep our community safe, right? What would keep our community safe is if our communities had access to resources initially. But keeping a family member, 8 out of 10 women that are incarcerated at Riverside facility in Philadelphia are mothers, right? Snatching a woman from her children does not improve the community. It is a detriment to the community. So these disconnects that we have disconnects that we have as to what keeps us safe or what is actually racism, I think we really have to start digging deeper in order to move through this and move to a better society. Sorry for that little sermon.
No, I agree with you.
I just want to add in that we're talking about people who are arrested, but people who are presumed innocent, right? Just to remind us all, and then who are also not getting the representation when the bail is being set. So there's those two things that are completely out of alignment, right? And so these folks should not be spending time in jail because they are presumed innocent. Right? And so
I would even argue that jail is just not, I'm a prison abolitionist, right? And that's kind of radical for a lot of people, but there has been so many systems that have caused so many layers of damage to impoverished communities, to Black and Brown communities. And then when people respond, and it's violence, right? Like not going to bed hungry, that is violence. Like not being able to work because you don't have childcare, all these things, all of these systems, the school system in Philadelphia, it is violence that we are committing against communities, and then wondering why they're responding violently. And instead of working towards healing, we throw them into jail where they're even more under-resourced, right? They don't have attorneys that are able to really fight for them. They don't have money to get out of prison and to really fight for their cases. And I think there, again, this disconnect, right? I don't think that our systems see how much violence we commit against communities, and thus people are responding violently, right? Martin Luther King said, violence can only beget violence. People aren't just randomly committing crimes and then deserving to be in prison. No, they are responding to the violence that they have been navigating for the entirety of their lives.
Right. And to your point, Bethany, that the other part that contributes to all of that is because 80% of the people who are part of the criminal justice system are people of color.
Yeah.
And so
and that's not because we commit more crimes, right? That's not because we commit more crimes.
Absolutely. And the state and the country who does not fund the defender associations. And so part of the problem, they are on overload, unfortunately, they are on overload and they're not getting the assistance from the state. So that's where, once again, we've got to talk about, how do we deal with the budget that's currently at hand in order to...
What do we value? A budget speaks to who and what you value.
Right. And so how do we deal with that in a way that then statutes are developed so that this can the defender associations across the state, and then to be able to defend, at the core. Well, the first thing for me is the fact that you've got so many folks being arrested that probably shouldn't even been arrested to begin with. So that's problem number one. And then number two, when they are, then not being able to stay out of the system long enough to even help continue like you said, if they're raising their children, or even to help them to get the information they need to help them help themselves.
Mhm.
So as part of that process, and that whole is the whole criminal justice system that's a problem.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So
In terms of the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund also, Bethany, do you feel like that they're able to have a significant enough impact? Or is that, as
Oh,
an
yeah.
organization trying to address this?
Yeah, I think the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund was founded in 2017. We intended on it being a one-time thing, right? The I'm forgetting the name, National Bailout Network, I believe, contacted a bunch of community grassroots organizations in different big cities and was like, hey, we're going to give you this much money. Can you raise this much money? And, we'll bail out a bunch of Black mothers for Mama's Day in 2017. We thought it would be a one-time thing. Our goal was to raise $25,000 in a week. I believe we raised $65,000 in 3 days.
Wow.
And we realized that there was such a need for this that we kept going. So over the last 4 years, we have raised over $3 million. Now, mind you, we're a grassroots organization and we just got staff last year. But we've been able to raise over $3 million. And I believe we've bailed out, I'm not even going to try and guess, but I know it's over 300 people. So we've definitely been able to affect huge change. And I feel like we've really shifted the culture in Philly as well. And we really have people talking about how detrimental cash bail is to Black and brown communities, the family members, and how cash bail is violence.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
People are having these conversations, and I think a big part of it is just is the work that we've done. But I might be partial.
No, I think it's so important. If you could have, I know we talked about the AFL-CIO case, so that's pending. But if you could do one other thing, what would you want to have? Legislation or just have that change? What would you choose to do, Bethany?
Yeah, I would want to end cash bail, and I would want us to actually have individual assessments, but I'm sure that would get racist and weird eventually too, like
as well.
We have. But really, if the goal of cash bail is to hold people accountable, how can we hold people accountable in healing ways, right? And I think an assessment would be able, I got distracted. I didn't know what the hand was for. Sorry. Everybody's wondering why I was pausing like that. I think an assessment that actually speaks to the needs of the individual to help them heal and also to help them be accountable and come back. That's what I want to see. But cash bail has to end.
Okay. And what about, I always think about the training for the district justices with the remaining, taking cash bail away, and then with the remaining options that they have, could there be some kind of education for district justices so that they could choose some kind of a measure, while also having representation in place at the time of the bail, so that there's representation for the person. What do you think about those?
They do actually have to train.
Yeah.
They actually do have to go through a course. The district justices actually do have to go through a course regarding that, because that's, they deal with cases, but that's their primary goal actually, is setting bail. So the state provides training, but on the other hand, like you were just saying, is that piece is not having and being arrested to begin with,
right?
Because let's just say we heard a lot of different cases, and there are some cases that arrest shouldn't even be the option. So some people have concerns. There are a lot of mental health issues. So putting those folks in jail does not help them at all. So there should be some social measures that would help them in that regard. So I think the other part is looking at the why. So if you have someone who is dangerous, but part of the reason is because maybe they were on medication and they went off their medication.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then, we could 302 them, we'll put them in a facility that would help them to get back on their medication and to be able to help them with other resources that they may need. But, putting them in jail is not going to help them in that regard.
Yeah.
I do think looking at the why,
Mm-hmm.
why are folks getting arrested? Is that even an accurate option? Is that something that even should be considered depending upon the reason?
Mm-hmm.
But, so I think that could be a huge part of consideration, is that the other options are available for somebody based on what their real need is. And depending upon who the officer is who's arresting them, may not even have any type of training to even realize that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's the other piece. Yeah.
Yeah. So some proactivity there, looking at that part of the process, that would be much more informed and compassionate.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We need, I've been taking a class. I really, I love this person in Philly, Michael O'Brien. He's brilliant. He does wonderful trauma-informed work. And he has this class about really bringing humanity into institutions, because so many, what is considered to be professional or just consistent institutional culture is really dehumanizing. And the cash system, the court system, really strips people of their humanity. And I think bringing more compassion and seeing people as a person that might have had a bad day, right? Or that might have just had terrible things happen to them all their lives, being able to see the true essence of somebody's humanity needs to be in the courtroom.
I agree.
That sounds
so
good.
As we're winding up, as we're winding down, this has been a great conversation and clearly one that easily continue, as being able to provide certain information to our viewing audience to see that, number one, that the things going on with major disparities as it relates to folks of color and for people as individuals to know their rights. Mm-hmm. So even to know what their rights are, to have some access to this place. And so as folks continue to have a better understanding of that, get the information that was provided today for consideration, and look at how we can continue this conversation, that it is my hope that as we continue, that the community will truly be able to have their say. Mm-hmm. Thank you.